Well, you know those mornings where you wake up and before your feet even touch the floor, your brain already feels like it is just shutting down.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Right. Your thoughts are just sort of sluggish and everything feels impossibly heavy.
Yeah.
And you are just lying there, waiting for a spark.
Yeah, you wait to suddenly feel this wave of motivation so you can get up and tackle the day.
Exactly. But that spark simply never
It
arrives.
is a totally universal human experience, but the mistake we make is really in our response to it.
Yeah.
Because when we feel that intense mental friction, our first instinct is just to retreat.
Right. We pull back.
Yeah, we tell ourselves, well, I will start once I feel ready. Or,
Right.
I will tackle that big project tomorrow when the motivation finally hits me.
Which is actually a huge biological trap.
It really is.
Waiting for motivation is, well, it is fundamentally misunderstanding how human drive actually works. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are on a very specific mission today, which is navigating those extremely tough days when you completely lose your motivation and just feel overwhelmed by life.
And we really want this to feel like a safe, cozy space for you today. No pressure, just a gentle look at how to get unstuck.
Absolutely. We are pulling our insights from a really fascinating stack of transcripts focused on daily life improvement and language learning habits. But the psychology here applies to absolutely any goal you're chasing right now.
Right, any goal at all. And the core misconception we found is that we treat motivation like the key that starts a car's engine.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. We believe we must feel inspired before we can take action.
Yeah.
But biologically and psychologically, we actually have the sequence backward. Motivation is not the cause of action.
Wait, it's not.
No, it is actually the result of action.
Okay, let's dig into the mechanics of that because that kind of changes everything about how we approach a difficult day. Because we tend to, sit around waiting for dopamine,
Yes,
right?
exactly. The brain's reward chemical.
Yeah, we wait for it to just flood our system and make us feel eager to work. But dopamine doesn't just arrive out of nowhere while we are staring at the bedroom ceiling.
It really doesn't. Dopamine is heavily tied to the anticipation of a reward and the recognition of progress. So when you take a tiny, almost insignificant physical action toward a goal, your brain registers a micro victory.
Ooh, a micro victory.
Micro victory, I like that.
Yeah, and that small victory triggers a very small release of dopamine. And this chemical release actually lowers the neurological friction required to take the second step. So the action absolutely has to precede the feeling.
So if you demand the feeling first, you are basically fighting your own biology.
Exactly. You lose before you even start.
You know, the transcripts feature this brilliant analogy to visualize this, and I just love it. Standing around waiting for motivation is like standing at the edge of a freezing cold swimming pool and saying, well, I will jump in as soon as I feel comfortable.
Right, which is impossible.
Exactly. You are never going to feel the comfort of being used to the water while you are just standing there shivering on the dry concrete. The comfort is a biological response that only happens after you make the jump. I love that so much. And the critical part of that analogy is that, the jump into the water does not have to be an elegant, perfect dive.
Oh, that is so true.
Because one of the biggest barriers to starting is just this illusion of perfection. We convince ourselves that if we cannot do like a full, perfect hour of work or a flawless workout, well, then it is not worth doing at all.
Right.
But a messy, totally imperfect action is vastly superior to waiting for a perfect state of mind.
Which brings up the concept of improving by just 1% every day. It comes up so frequently in these sources.
The 1% rule is magic.
It really is. The math behind it is staggering. If you get just 1% better every day, those tiny imperfect efforts just compound. By the end of a single year, you are 37 times better at whatever you are doing.
37 times.
Yeah, but I actually want to challenge this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Well, when someone is in the absolute depths of feeling truly overwhelmed, like when their brain feels completely frozen, even a 1% effort feels like climbing a mountain. So how do we take that very first step when the friction is just that high?
That is such a fair question. To answer that, we really have to understand the actual mechanism of overwhelm. We often use the metaphor of a computer with too many tabs open, right?
Yes, the endless browser tabs, I know that feeling.
We all do. But let's look at what is actually happening in the brain. Overwhelm is essentially a bottleneck in your prefrontal cortex, which is just the part of your brain responsible for making decisions and organizing tasks.
Okay.
When you try to hold multiple unstructured really vague goals in your head all at once, work duties, family stuff, personal ambitions, your working memory just hits its absolute capacity limit.
So the brain basically throws an error code.
Exactly. It cannot prioritize all those demands, so it just chooses to do absolutely nothing. It freezes.
Wow. So how do we unfreeze it?
Well, the prefrontal cortex needs clear, singular, highly specific instructions to bypass that bottleneck. Think of it like programming a GPS in your car.
Okay. I'm with you.
If you get into your car and simply tell the navigation system, hey, take me somewhere to improve my life, the system cannot calculate a route. The instruction is way too vague.
Right. You just sit in the driveway forever. The GPS needs a really specific, very small address. It needs a tiny plan.
Yes, exactly. A tiny plan bypasses the overwhelmed brain.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of the massive goal like I need to learn a whole new language, the tiny specific address is I will review 3 vocabulary words for 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Or instead of I need to clean the entire house, the address is just I will put away 3 items from the kitchen counter.
And what makes these tiny plans so incredibly effective is that they do not require you to find a massive, unbroken block of free time. The material introduces this idea of pocket time, which honestly completely changes how we view our daily schedules.
It is such a great concept.
Because we tend to view our time like a crisp, high-value banknote, right? We think we need a full, uninterrupted hour to make any real progress on a goal.
Which is a total luxury that most people simply do not have on a busy Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. But if you think of your time not as large banknotes, but as like small 5-minute coins jingling in your pocket throughout the day, the opportunities just multiply.
Right, you have a 5-minute coin while you are waiting for the bus.
Yes. Or a 3-minute coin while the kettle is boiling for tea. Normally, we just throw those coins away by staring blankly at the wall or picking up our phone.
Oh, we are all guilty of that.
Right. But if you spend those small coins on your tiny plan, you totally bypass the need for massive motivation.
Yeah, you spend a 5-minute coin organizing just a single folder on your computer desktop. Or you spend a 3-minute coin doing a really quick stretching routine. You are stacking up those micro victories we talked about.
And releasing small amounts of dopamine.
Exactly. You are steadily moving the car forward without ever needing to rev the engine to its absolute maximum limit.
Okay, I understand the mechanics of the tiny plans and the pocket coins. It makes total sense. But I kind of have to push back on this approach a little.
Okay, what is the concern?
Well, we live in a culture that constantly tells us to dream big, right? To set massive, really ambitious goals. If I only ever focus on tiny 5-minute increments and, organizing a single drawer, do I not lose sight of the big picture?
I see what you mean.
Like, do I run the risk of letting my huge ambitions just wither away while I am obsessing over micro tasks?
That is a very valid concern. It really is. The
Right.
risk of the tiny plan is definitely losing that overarching vision. But the alternative, which is trying to aggressively chase 4 massive ambitions at the exact same time, well, that guarantees a brain crash.
Right, the computer tabs freeze again.
Exactly. So the solution proposed in our sources is not to abandon your big dreams, but to organize them into seasons.
Seasons, meaning like we assign different goals to different times of the year.
It is more about defining the current chapter of your life. Human energy is finite, right?
Mhm.
You might decide that the next 3 months are your season for focusing really intensely on a career certification.
Okay.
So that goal gets to sit in the driver's seat of the car. It gets your absolute best energy.
But wait, what about my health goals? Or, say, my goal to write a book? I cannot just abandon my health for 3 months because I'm studying for a work certificate.
No, you don't abandon them at all. You just put them in the back seat.
Back seat, okay.
Yeah, putting a goal in the back seat does not mean throwing it out of the moving vehicle. It just means shifting from growth mode into maintenance mode. For the goals in the back seat, you establish what they call a daily anchor.
Oh, a daily anchor, like an anchor to keep a boat from completely drifting away in the current.
Exactly that. The daily anchor is a non-negotiable, incredibly tiny action that simply maintains the habit. So if your health is in the back seat right now, your daily anchor isn't some punishing 1-hour workout.
Right, because that takes too much energy.
Right. It is simply drinking a glass of water every morning, or maybe just taking a 10-minute walk. It tells your brain that your identity of being a healthy person is still totally intact without draining the cognitive energy you need for the goal up in the driver's seat.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It really removes the guilt of not making massive progress on every single front simultaneously.
It is so freeing, honestly.
But let's look at the reality of trying to actually execute this, right? Even if I have my tiny plan and I know exactly what my daily anchor is, there are traps everywhere.
Oh, everywhere.
It is so incredibly easy to get derailed, and once you get derailed, that really heavy feeling of overwhelm just rushes right back in. So how do we handle that?
Well, the material breaks these traps down into two main categories.
Hmm.
You have your external time thieves and your internal psychological barriers.
Hmm.
Both create massive amounts of mental friction, but they operate very differently.
Okay, well, the external time thieves are definitely the most obvious.
Yeah.
We are talking about endless social media scrolling, right? The constant vibration of notifications or the habit of checking our emails every 10 minutes. These things literally reach into your pocket and steal those 5-minute coins we just talked about.
They really do.
Yeah.
But the damage goes way deeper than simply losing 5 minutes. The real danger of a time thief is this concept called context switching.
Context switching.
Yeah. Every single time you pull your attention away from your tiny plan to look at a notification, your brain has to load up a completely new set of rules and context.
Oh, wow.
And then it has to expend even more energy to switch back to the original task. This rapid context switching just burns through your brain's energy supply at an alarming rate.
Which perfectly explains why you can spend an hour doing absolutely nothing on your phone, and yet you walk away feeling completely physically and mentally exhausted.
Yes. The time thief doesn't just steal the time, it totally drains your battery without giving you any meaningful dopamine reward in return.
Wow. But as damaging as those external time thieves are, the internal traps seem far more insidious. Which brings us to negative self-talk and the mechanics of the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Ah, the RAS. It is such a fascinating piece of neurology.
It really is. Let's break down exactly how this functions as an internal trap when we are feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, so the reticular activating system is this little bundle of nerves at our brainstem. You can think of it as the ultimate bouncer at the door of a highly exclusive nightclub.
A bouncer. I love that image.
Right, because at any given moment, your brain is just bombarded with millions of bits of sensory information. If your brain tried to process all of it, you would literally go insane. So the RAS filters out about 99% of it, only letting through the information that it deems strictly relevant to you.
But the bouncer isn't deciding what is objectively true or false, right? The bouncer is simply following the instructions you give it.
Precisely. The RAS filters your reality based on your dominant thoughts and beliefs. So if you sit on the couch feeling overwhelmed and your internal monologue is saying, I am terrible at following through, or I am failing at all my goals.
Then you have basically just handed the bouncer a VIP list.
Yes, you have told the RAS that evidence of your failure is highly relevant information.
Oh, that is so dangerous.
It is. So your brain will actively scan your environment and your memory to highlight every tiny mistake, every missed deadline, and every flaw. And simultaneously, it will filter out and ignore your micro victories.
Wait, really? It just hides your progress?
Yes, it will literally blind you to your own progress just to confirm the negative story you were telling yourself.
So you're physiologically programming your own brain to maintain that state of overwhelm.
Exactly.
That is terrifying. But to counteract this, the sources suggest a very specific practical mindset shift. Instead of declaring a definitive negative statement like, I am terrible at this, you transition to the phrase, I am under construction.
I am under construction. It is such a powerful neurological instruction.
Right, because it acknowledges the mess. When a building is under construction, there is dust everywhere, there are exposed wires, and things just look chaotic. But the chaos is not a sign of failure. It is actually evidence that work is happening.
Exactly. By telling yourself, I'm under construction, you give the RAS a completely new set of instructions. You tell the bouncer to start looking for evidence of progress, however small or messy it might be.
Okay, I love that. But I want to connect this back to the external time thieves for a second.
Sure.
Because I can sit there telling myself I am under construction all day long, but if my phone buzzes on the table right next to me, well, the phone usually wins. So how do we practically protect our tiny plans from these thieves without becoming completely isolated?
Well, relying on willpower is a deeply unreliable strategy.
Yeah, willpower always fails me.
Right, because if you rely on willpower to ignore a distraction, you are burning cognitive energy. The strategy is to alter your physical environment to increase the friction of bad habits and decrease the friction of good habits.
So changing the room around you.
Yes, if your tiny plan requires 10 minutes of focus, you physically lock the door on the distraction, you put the phone in another room, you do not just put it face down on the desk because that is not enough, you have to remove it from your visual field entirely.
So you literally create a physical boundary to protect that pocket time.
Exactly.
But, even with the best boundaries, we are human. We will miss a day. A time thief will occasionally win the afternoon. And I think this leads to a really critical pivot in our understanding of overwhelm.
Oh, definitely.
Because we have focused heavily so far on taking action, bypassing the brain's bottleneck, and defending our time. But what happens when the friction isn't a failure of our systems, but a legitimate biological signal?
Ah, yes. This is where we must confront the modern stigma against rest.
Yes, let's talk about rest.
We have been so conditioned to view rest as a failure of productivity. We view sitting still as literally wasting time. But biologically, rest is not wasting time. It is an active, necessary phase of the growth cycle.
The transcripts use a very specific metaphor here that I think just resonates universally. Your brain and your physical body operate exactly like a smartphone battery.
It is the perfect comparison.
Right, because we treat our electronics with far more respect than we treat our own nervous systems. If you run your phone all day, constantly switching between heavy applications, keeping the screen on maximum brightness, and you never physically plug it into the wall, well, what happens?
The battery inevitably drains to zero,
Yeah.
and the device forces a shutdown.
Exactly. Human biology is no different. That heavy, overwhelming feeling, the brain fog, the total lack of motivation, it isn't just a psychological attitude problem.
No, not at all. It is closely linked to the buildup of a neurochemical called adenosine. The longer you are awake and processing complex tasks, the more adenosine accumulates in your brain, and that creates sleep pressure and cognitive fatigue.
And you cannot out-willpower adenosine.
You really can't. Pushing through a dead battery is not a badge of honor. It is entirely counterproductive.
There is an anecdote in the material that perfectly illustrates this biological reality. A person was facing a really tight deadline, and they were trying to work on a highly complex project late into the night.
Right?
Their battery was firmly in the red, their brain was just swimming in adenosine, but they tried to force it, pushing through the friction for 2 agonizing hours.
And the output of those 2 hours of forced labor was practically unusable. The cognitive quality was just terrible.
Yes. But when they finally surrendered to biology, stopped trying to be productive, and went to sleep to actually charge their battery, the situation completely changed.
Night and day difference.
They woke up the next morning, sat down with the exact same project, and completed the work flawlessly in just 30 minutes.
Because they were operating with a charged system. The friction was gone. The absolute smartest, most efficient, and most productive action you can take for your long-term goals is frequently to just close your eyes and go to sleep.
Flexibility over perfection. If life is messy and you miss a day, your goal doesn't get angry and leave you. You just bend a little, get some rest, and come back. Which brings us to you, our listener. We try to incorporate a tiny favor into these deep dives to help connect these concepts to your daily reality.
Yes, we love hearing from you.
Considering the profound biological need to clear that adenosine and reset the system, we would love to know, what is your favorite way to recharge your battery when you feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, are you someone who requires complete silence? Do you recharge by stepping away from screens and maybe taking a walk without any audio? Or does charging your battery mean losing yourself in a fiction book for 20 minutes?
Understanding your own personal charging cable and knowing exactly what effectively brings your battery back from 1% is just as vital as knowing how to set a tiny plan.
It really is the foundation that makes all the other strategies possible. Without it, the tiny plans will eventually just fail.
Absolutely. So to ensure these cozy, powerful concepts really stick with you, and to give you a very practical mental checklist for the next time you wake up feeling that intense mental friction, let's do a quick vocabulary tour.
Sounds great.
Think of these 4 terms as your blueprint for navigating an overwhelming day. The first concept is overwhelmed.
Right. In our context today, being overwhelmed is not a character flaw. It is simply a working memory bottleneck. It is the feeling of having too much happening, like a small table where people keep stacking books until they fall off. It is the signal that you need to close the tabs and create a single, tiny plan.
Perfect. The second concept on our checklist is flexible. Being flexible is the antidote to the perfectionism that stops us from jumping into the pool.
Yeah, it means bending a little when life gets crazy, not breaking. Accepting that an imperfect, messy 1% effort is still a victory.
The third crucial concept is recharge. Recharging is recognizing that getting your energy back is exactly like plugging in that dying phone battery. Rest is an active biological necessity, not a moral failure.
And the final word on our checklist is consistent. Being consistent does not mean operating at maximum intensity every single day. Consistency is just doing a small, tiny thing regularly, not perfectly. It is spending your pocket coins on your daily anchor.
Overwhelmed, flexible, recharge, consistent. These are the mechanics of sustained momentum.
They really are. And as we conclude our deep dive today, I want to offer a final thought for you to carry with you, just to ponder on your own.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend so much energy fighting our lack of motivation and, punishing ourselves for feeling stuck. But what if the extreme friction and lack of motivation you feel today isn't a sign that you are failing at your goals?
What is it then?
What if that heavy feeling is simply an engine light illuminating on your dashboard? An engine light isn't a judgment of the car's worth. It is simply a neutral indicator telling you that the system is running on 1% battery.
Yeah.
You just need to sit quietly and plug in before taking your next step.
Oh, wow. It is just an indicator light. You don't abandon the journey, you just tend to the machinery. That is a truly brilliant way to frame it. So the next time your brain feels entirely frozen, remember that you don't need massive motivation to start. Find a tiny address for your GPS, embrace being under construction, and above all, respect your battery. Please remember to be kind to yourselves. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.